I think it's sporting to just give her a chance to tell me, but she never does.
Well, that would take all the fun away.
Yeah, pretty much. But, you got to ask. Mm-hmm. Well, geez, it's hard to say what I usually do beyond that because they all get different after that. But
which is a good point. It's vastly different. When you and your wife play, do you do this a lot, and is it different each time? Is it
actually interrogation play is not something that I do with my wife.
Oh, okay.
Because she doesn't like that kind of adversarial approach in her play.
Oh.
Okay. It sets off. Basically, it makes her angry. If she feels like she's fighting with her partner, and that kind of tug of war back and forth is a lot of what interrogation scenes are about.
Okay.
She doesn't like to feel that way. So interrogation play is not something that I do with my wife.
Well, good. I think the good point you made there is how it feels like. What did you say? It's like fighting almost back and forth.
Yeah, it's adversarial.
Okay.
Where you've got a kind of competitive, combative relationship between the top and the bottom. That's part of what makes interrogation play hot for the people that enjoy it.
Yes,
but
I am excited to do it.
For somebody who doesn't like that feeling of being at odds with their partner, it's not going to work for them. And so my wife is one of those people.
Okay. What do you get out of it?
Well, there's a kind of a competitive aspect to it. There's, can I get you to tell me this? And there's also probably the thing that pushes my buttons most as a top. I saw a T-shirt once that said, "A sadist is one who cares enough to inflict the very best."
That's good.
I like getting reactions out of my partner, especially intense, powerful emotional reactions, and realizing that I'm the cause, that I'm the active agent that's bringing this out of her. That's probably my biggest kick in BDSM across the board. Mm-hmm. Interrogation play adds to that sense of competition, of kind of a mental combat, for want of a better word, between me and the bottom, in which neither one of us is going to be injured, but it is still a competition, a game almost. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the same feeling that you might get from any competitive game you play, from poker to checkers. This sense of meeting an adversary on the playing field, so to speak, mm-hmm. and one of you wins and one of you doesn't. Of course, ideally in BDSM, both of you win, but it's a different kind of winning and losing.
Mm-hmm. Now, I had read one time, I did read one book about a person that did interrogation play, and he would go through painstaking, sometimes, time to find the right setting for the scene, the right, he would really take time to plan things out. Where is this going to take place? So have you ever done that? And what's the length you've gone to or heard of someone going to? And
oh, boy. There are people who are, for want of a better word, planners. And that's a lot of what they get out of it. The pre-game, what happens beforehand is as important to them as it is to, as the play itself.
I like that.
I'm not necessarily one of those people, although I do like kind of, storyboarding it, getting some idea in my head of how it might go and different branches that it might take. Mm-hmm. It hardly ever works out exactly the way I figured it would. But I find that thinking about it in that way in advance gives me a better handle for when it does head off in some direction that I wasn't expecting. Mm-hmm. I don't do that kind of meticulous planning myself, but I know the kind of thing you mean, mm-hmm. and for people who enjoy that kind of thing, that attention to detail and that finding exactly the right place is as much a part of the thrill for them as the play itself.
Okay.
I think in their case it reflects both an attention to detail and a wish to set exactly the right mood that I think is probably commendable. It's just not a mindset that I share.
And it's just one of the ways people could go, and it's good to mention it for a lot of times I find some people, a lot of people actually, since have never even considered so many of these things we're talking about, to do in their relationships to spice things up, especially when we've been in BDSM for so long, we forget what it's like. And I think, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, since we're talking about settings, I should mention that setting can make a difference. For example, a scene like this that happens in the bottom's own bedroom can feel very different to him or her than a scene that is arranged to happen in a seedy hotel room or in a friend's dirty basement. All of these have very different atmospheres, and there are things in there that are worth thinking about. How is it going to affect my partner if this does happen in her own bedroom, especially if it was relatively spontaneous. That is, she knew something like this was going to happen, but she didn't necessarily know where or when. And then one night after the movie, I grab her and I drag her into her bedroom, and that's when we do this thing. That kind of abduction, force, home invasion mind state can have a very different impact on someone than a scene that was prepared, that she knew was going to happen, that happens perhaps in a public dungeon or something like that. It's all of these things come together, and it's worth talking to your partner and asking them about their fantasies. If they like interrogation play, then do they envision it as a kind of a playful interaction where everybody's having fun and we both know that this is going to have a certain ending, or do they want something that's got a grittier edge to it? Do they want camo and combat boots, like I mentioned before? Do they want it to feel like a military interrogation? One scene that I did once, my partner and I were going to a public play space, and I don't know how much your listeners know about dungeons and play spaces and things like that, so I'm a little hesitant here. But suffice it to say, there are places in most large cities, and they advertise in adult newspapers and online and so forth, where you can get together and it's a big room or multiple rooms with various fetish equipment in it, and that's where people play. They usually have set party nights and so forth. And I was taking a partner to one of those. We went out to dinner beforehand. Before the scene, I found this conspiracy website on the internet, and it had these papers that were related to some sort of UFO conspiracy that the government was supposed to be behind. The theory was that the website had the website claimed that it had gotten these papers by some anonymous source, and that the papers revealed, great government secrets behind this UFO conspiracy. And what I did was I downloaded those papers and I sent them to my partner. All this was a couple of days before the scene. I sent them to my partner a couple of days before the scene as an attachment to an email. And about 5 minutes after I sent them to her, I sent her another email that basically had across the subject line, this big, oops, sorry, made a mistake, sent you the wrong attachment, please just delete that message.
Oh. Set up?
Yes, it was. And then during dinner, I talked to her a bit, and, I mentioned that, I really felt embarrassed about having sent her that
the attachment UFO.
That attachment, and I hope she'd just gone ahead and deleted it, because I'd be very embarrassed if she hadn't. And she said she'd opened it and glanced at it, and then she decided it wasn't anything she needed to worry about, and she deleted it. Now, I should say also that she did not know going in that this was going to be an interrogation scene. she and I had talked about interrogation play, and I knew she liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the negotiation took place. But she did not know going in that this was specifically going to be an interrogation scene.
Wow.
Once I got her to the play space, and bear in mind this is a public dungeon, there are lots of people around and other folks doing scenes and so forth, I got her restrained, and then I said to her, I really wish you hadn't read that email.
Wow.
And at that point, the scene took off with me trying to get her to tell me what she had read, what she had found out from those papers.
Mm-hmm.
That was the basis of the scene at that point.
Oh, great.
So, you can do this kind of pre-planning, and it can work when you do it. It takes a little bit of practice and a cooperative partner, because she wasn't completely unaware of what was coming. As soon as I asked her about it at dinner, she just wasn't sure.
Right.
So yeah, that sort of thing
stuff.
can be done. It can be done, can be made to work.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes talking. I had talked to her about what she called rough play and things that included interrogation scenes, rape scenes, abduction scenes, quite a bit. And we'd played a couple of times before, so I knew the kind of thing she liked, and I was willing to do that kind of semi-spontaneous scene with her based on what I already knew, but I wouldn't have just done it with somebody that I'd never played with before.
Now, I have a question for you. This is also kind of just personal. Do you ever find yourself, when you're doing these scenes, interrogating them for play, or do you ever actually start probing for your own purposes? Does that make sense?
The tickling scene that I mentioned was for my own purposes.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to know where to tickle her, so I got her to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
But if you mean, am I actually looking for personal information that I would use for my own gain? No.
Is it ever? Yeah, you've never branched into that.
No, that's not cool.
Okay, good.
That's like reading her mail.
Mm-hmm.
That's no.
Well,
not right.
This is, it's very important to say, because with people that are new to this, they might, we have talked a lot about negotiating, but what people like and don't like, but that is such a good, it really is a good point for people new to this. It's not for information.
Yeah. If you wouldn't read her mail to find something out, don't go into an interrogation scene about it unless you've really worked it out beforehand. And this is one place that interrogation play varies from other types of play, because, you can use spankings and floggings and pain play and all that other stuff that you might use in an interrogation scene in any other sort of scene that involves pain play. But what makes an interrogation scene different is it's psychological. It's a mental game. It's getting into somebody's head. And if you get into somebody's head and you start poking around in places that scare them, mm-hmm. the scene can go south very fast. Unless you've talked about this in advance and said, we're going to do something scary. Mm-hmm. The person ends up feeling betrayed. They end up feeling that you're actually trying to damage them. You're trying to get something that could be used against them, and they don't want that. That's a recipe for a disaster.
Right.
It's not something that I would suggest anybody ever just mess around with.
Well, and that is kind of brings us to, one of the last things we talk about, because we are running out of time, unfortunately, but safety. That's part of probably, would you say, one of the biggest things with safety protocol when it comes to interrogation play?
Well, yeah. You've got all of the usual stuff, like watch their breathing, don't tie the bondage too tight, all the stuff. You've got all of the safety precautions that go with every type of play that you're incorporating into the scene. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a spanking, or whether it's using hot wax, or if it's using electrical play, you've got all of the safety precautions that go with every type of play in the scene. Mm-hmm. And then you've got some additional ones. For example, if you're doing a takedown scene where you're doing an abduction, you're grabbing them out of the blue and you're hauling them off to wherever you're going to do the scene. you need to watch out for things like breakable objects in the immediate vicinity because there's going to be a